The new and upcoming Marvel fighting game by Arc System Works, Marvel Tōkon, is about to come out. The release is only a couple of months away, and I know that everybody is extremely excited for the game. For me personally, it is my most expected fighting game of the last decade. The only game that I can think of that I was this excited for was Dragon Ball FighterZ. But there is one character that to me accumulates all the questions that I have about the launch of this game that is so close to coming out, and I still don't know how to answer them. So in this video, we are going to discuss the case of the champion of the universe and how there are so many different questions about the launch of Tōkon around the roster, the characters, the story, and it all connects and goes back to the champion. So like and subscribe if you want to see more content from Marvel Tōkon or you just want to support the channel. Thank you. And now let's talk about the champion. So the first big mystery around the champion is the possibility that he could be a playable character that you can unlock via story mode progression, or for example an in-game free currency that you get and earn by just playing and engaging with the game. In the case that you didn't know about it, Arc System Works, the team behind Marvel Tōkon, is one of the few kind of like modern fighting game developers that still has unlockable characters in some of their games. The biggest case of this, in my opinion, would be Dragon Ball FighterZ, which was released a decade ago, and even though it was a decade ago, it's still technically a modern fighting game and arguably the biggest fighting game that Arc System Works has ever released. And in Dragon Ball FighterZ, you actually had 3 different characters that you could unlock just by progressing in the game in some way or form. For example, you could unlock Android 21, which was the original character created for Dragon Ball FighterZ and the story mode. She was kind of like the villain of the big narrative of the game. And then you could also unlock the blue transformations for Goku and Vegeta in the context of just also playing the game. I think that was actually with in-game currency or Seni, which was the way to unlock them. So what if that is going to be the case as well for example, the champion in Tōkon? By the way, Dragon Ball FighterZ is not the only case of an Arc System Works fighting game that has unlockable characters. For example, on Guilty Gear XR Sign, you could unlock Sin if you just use kind of like in-game currency on a shop. You could get the character, no need to pay for a DLC, and you can play him. And also, if we can consider DNF Duel on a list of Arc System Works games that have an unlockable character, you could also unlock the Lost Warrior, which was kind of like the last final boss of DNF Duel story mode, and that was also a playable character that you would get if you actually just finish the story. And then there is also kind of like a secondary mystery or question, in my opinion, connected to this first topic, or the idea that the champion could be playable, because if the champion is a playable, unlockable character, is there any chance that we can also extend that to other of the Elders of the Universe that are clearly key to the story, like the Promoter? Like the Promoter has a very clearly super important role in the story mode and the narrative of the game. So could she be playable too, and not only, you know, the main kind of like villain or boss fight of the game that seems to be against the champion? We don't know if this is going to be the case. Like I say, all of this is just a mystery that we're going to know when the game actually comes out, or if we get some sort of surprise on a trailer. But can you imagine that we get, for example, a surprise team that is extra for the roster, and it's the champion, the Promoter, and 2 other Elders of the Universe? It will be pretty freaking insane, super cool. There you get also more kind of like obscure, right, or weirdo characters that are not that popular added into the roster, and you get some more playable characters, which is always great. Now, I don't know if this is gonna happen or if it's gonna be the case. What I believe is the most likely is just the champion being playable, and that's it, because he's very clearly kind of like the final boss of the story, and we're gonna talk about that story role later. But if there is any chance of an unlockable playable character, I will put my money on the champion and nobody else. And now let's move into the second mystery or question around the champion, and this one is dependent on him being playable, but still, hear me out, okay? What if the champion is playable and unlockable, but on top of that, he's also the grappler of the game? Because if we take a look at the roster and the characters that have been announced until now, there's arguably not a single grappler in the game. The only character that is a bit close to that is Hulk, but Hulk really is more comparable to something like C. Broly or Dragon Ball Super Broly from Dragon Ball FighterZ. Like, he's a very big body character that has a lot of armor, and even though he could have a couple of command grabs, when we look at his trailer, that is very obviously not his main thing. You know, he's not like Android 16 in Dragon Ball FighterZ, which was kind of like the resident grappler in the launch roster of the game, and we still don't have that in Marvel Tōkon. So what if really the grappler role or archetype is going to be actually for the champion as an unlockable playable character in the game? And I know that some people might actually jump to this idea of, you know, who cares, maybe there's not gonna be a grappler in the game, like a pure archetype grappler that's not gonna be a part of the launch roster, and the closest thing that we're gonna get is Hulk as a hybrid that is mostly a big body armor move character that has a couple of command grabs, and that's it. Similar, you know, to C Broly again, or Dragon Ball Super Broly from DVFC. But if you really look at it with perspective, Arc System Works really likes their grapplers, okay? And I don't think that arcsys has released a fighting game for over a decade or more that doesn't have a real grappler in the roster. It is a very, very classic archetype that also a lot of people like, and there is a lot of people that play fighting games and only play grapplers. So I would be very surprised if Tōkon doesn't have a single pure grappler archetype in the launch roster of the game. Now obviously there's still an entire team of characters with Ghost Rider as the leader that needs to be announced, and we don't know who's gonna make it, so there could be a grappler there, and then you don't need to make the champion an actual grappler. But I do think that the champion being a playable character and being a grappler could be really, really fun and kind of like iconic, because if Tōkon is going to have a super big story mode that maybe is going to have a couple of really hard boss fights, the champion being a boss fight that is a grappler could be legendary. Like, it could go, you know, into the pantheon of boss fights from fighting games that are mad annoying and super hard, and that is kind of like a part of the legacy of fighting games as a genre. So it could be really cool if that happens. So the idea of the champion being a playable character that ends up also being the pure grappler of the game, I would maybe still take it into consideration. I don't think it is impossible. It also makes a lot of sense for the grappler as a character. His design, you know, he's a big body, giant guy that is super strong. So him command grabbing you to death is probably not impossible. And then the last mystery or question that I want to talk about around the champion is the story mode and the narrative, because we all know that the trailers until now have been put in this idea that the champion has a tournament and that essentially the heroes from Earth and other parts of the Marvel Universe have to fight to get to the final part of the tournament and then fight the champion. But I feel like it is a setup. Like, I really feel like the champion is not going to be the true final boss fight of the game, and the villains of, for example, the team with Doom could be a part of the actual final part of the story mode, because when you look at the Knights of Doom team, it is an absolute mess in terms of lore and story. Like, those four guys would not work with each other on a comic. They would probably kill each other if we're talking about, you know, lore and how to develop a narrative. So I wouldn't be surprised if the story mode kind of like starts with the tournament, the champion being the guy on top, right, that you have to fight, but then the heroes have to come together and fight actually not the champion, but Doom, Carnage, the Green Goblin, and Magneto. I think that that could be the case with the story, and there could be a plot twist right there in which the champion is the motor of the story, but not really the final boss fight. Now, obviously, this video is just a speculation to have fun with the game that is so close to coming out, but I do have this idea in my mind that is bothering me, that I just feel like the champion is not really going to be the main villain of the story, and there is some sort of twist with the Doom team and Magneto, Green Goblin, Carnage, and all of those crazy guys being together, because it feels fishy. It's kind of weird when you look at it, you know, at their background, their personalities. Like, it is really, really weird. Of course, I could be wrong, but again, it's just a speculation to have fun. So that was the video, guys. I hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments your take about the champion. You know, is he gonna be a playable character or not? The other elders of the universe, like the promoter, is he gonna be the grappler of the roster, or even not the final boss of the story mode and the narrative of the game? Let me know your take in the actual comments. Like and subscribe if you want to support the channel or want to see more Marvel Tōkon content on the channel. Thank you, and now see you on the next one. Take care.